Last class, we looked at the idea of physiognomy, and on the Moodle page, I've made a connection between the idea of physiognomy and typology. And we're looking at the work of Nancy Burson and her work uh, with a special emphasis towards her photograph Warhead and other related work. This is a tutorial where I'm going to do my version of Nancy Burson's work, but not necessarily a direct copy, but an idea. Now, this project you can see here on Bridge. It's a project I did a few years ago, which I would like to be ongoing, which was essentially an August Sander inspired typology photographic project where I photographed anyone who had anything to do with the land in my local area. I dropped letters off to different properties and people came forward. Friends of mine came forward and I photographed them with the title Lifestylers, people who lived on lifestyle blocks, whether they lived in yurts or whether they had fancy lifestyle blocks, whether they worked on the land, people who had historical connections to the land, like my colleague Stephen Roberts, people who enjoyed the land because of its benefits, people who were unusual and quirky and liked to work with the land, friends, neighbors, rich, poor, and unusual characters. So what I wanted to do here was work with this. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take one of these photographs and see how I can combine them being inspired by Nancy Burson. Here I have a photograph of my friend Steve, who is a ranger with Christchurch City Council in Bottle Lake Park, and Sue, his wife, and their two children, Billy and Jack. So what I want to do here is I want to see what a combination picture looks like of everyone in the family, and I'm going to give you a brief description of how I'm going to do it. I'm going to stop the video because there's lots of repetitive actions in this tutorial, and then I'm going to show you the result. We're going to use two tools here, well, three tools. We're going to look at the way layering can be worked with in Photoshop. I'm going to do cloning, deleting, and I'm going to use the transform tool, and then we're going to blend all the layers together. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to have 4 new layers, which represents every member of the family. And to make layers in Photoshop, all I need to do is press the Add Blank Layer button. 1, 2, 3, 4. You can rename layers in Photoshop quite easily. I can right-click, and down here somewhere, I can, oh, I thought I could rename a layer. Maybe it's a click. There we are. It's a click. Sorry. So I'm going to give each layer a name. Sue. It's a bit quirky. It doesn't like to be, there we are. Double click. Steve. Jack. And Billy. These have been my family friends for many years. I've watched their kids grow up alongside our kids, and they're standing on our lifestyle block, which we owned a couple of years ago. Okay, so the first thing I want to do is I really need to zoom in onto my area. So I'm going to zoom in on Jack first of all. I'm going to transfer Jack's face onto each one of these layers. Now I can do it just by going to one layer and then cloning onto another layer, then adjusting the picture to try and fit the features of everybody on the page. So first of all, I can double click the background layer, and that unlocks it so I can work with it. Make sure I have it selected. I'm going to come over here and I'm going to select my clone tool. And whilst I'm on this layer, I'm going to press my Option command, and I'm going to make a target, and I'm going to copy from this layer. I think that's a little big, that brush. I can change the size of the brush by pressing the square brackets keys, either the left for smaller or the right for bigger. Okay, so I'm going to select the base layer before I do my copying. Make sure I have my clone stamp selected and make sure that the brush size is the right size. To change the brush size of my stamp tool, I can press the left bracket button for smaller and my right bracket button for bigger. I'm just going to make it a bit bigger than Jack's eye, just a bit bigger. And then to copy an area, I click on the layer I want to copy. I move over the object I want to copy. I press the Option key. I click my mouse button. And then now I've copied that area, you can see the eye follows me around. I will select the next layer. And I'm going to copy to Sue. So I'm going to click on Sue's layer and I'm going to copy Jack's face relatively roughly onto the layer. Make sure I've got it here. Okay. I'm going to take this area I've copied and paste it into the other layers on top of the other members of the family. So I'm going to go Command A to select, and you can see there's a little scissor thing, little scissor sign has come up when I press Command A. I'm just going to drag that quickly, and what that does is it makes a selection of the area. Interestingly, I've missed a little bit of Jack's nose, so I'm going to deselect by clicking on my marquee tool, clicking, and that will deselect. I'm actually going to go back to my clone tool, and I'm going to go back to my layer here, and I'm just going to fill in that area of the nose. Okay, that's good. All right, back to the Sue layer. Command A to select all. And then I move my mouse once I've got my Command key pressed down, and I can just snip out that selection area that I've copied. Oh, look, this still did a bad job there. Maybe I cloned it to the wrong place. Never mind, I'll carry on. I'm going to copy this now. So Command C on my keyboard to copy. And I'm going to go to Steve. And I'm going to deselect and Command V. Yeah, you can see there's a little gap here I've left. I can move that layer, that part of the layer now. And I can pop it over Steve, roughly. We could actually line up all the noses. And now I'm going to copy and paste this into Billy's picture. So I'm going to select the Billy layer, Command V, and I'm just going to move Jack's face over Billy. Okay, so what I'm going to do, in fact, they share noses, interestingly enough. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to work on each layer just to make sure the face fits, and then we're going to do a little bit of blending. Okay, so I'm going to go Command T to select. And now I can either transform using my transform tools like this, but I've got no reference point. So if I want a reference point, I can use blending in my layers, the opacity blending in my layers. So I'm just going to deselect that, making sure I'm still on Billy's layer. I'm going to go to the opacity tool here, and I'm just going to change that down to about a bit higher, just so now I've got a vision of both faces in my layer. I can select my move tool, and you can see now when I move Jack around, you can see that they're almost blended together. Now I can go Command T, and I can use my basic transform tools just to try and fix everything so they're about right. But I can actually finalize and work quite well with other transform tools. If I want to change the way my transform tool works, I can go to Edit, Transform, and I can use Distort or Warp here. So I'll go Distort, and now this will give me little tools where I can actually just move the face around just so I can just do a blend of the face just so it's about right. Okay, when I'm done, I press return on my keyboard. And now what I want to do is I just want to use my eraser tool, making sure it's quite soft, and I'm just going to carefully erase. Oh, that's quite a hard tool. See, it's got a hard edge on it. If I go down here, I can actually change my hardness in my tool. So let's go again, and that's a lot better. So now I can blend this. Brush is a bit small, so I'm just going to increase the size of the brush, and we can just start blending the two faces together. Okay, that's looking good. Okay, so we have a sort of composite of Billy and Jack. Okay, I'm going to do this to all my other layers, and then we're going to, I'll get back to you with the next video.